Eitan here with the Rebel.media with Joe Warmington, columnist with the Toronto Sun. Thanks for having me. Just here the day after the election to discuss the supermajority that Doug Ford won. Joe, what does that supermajority say about Ontario voters?
Well, the voters were always going to do this. It says more about the media party, who right up until the end of this race were talking about it being close and it might be an NDP government. When Ontario voters spit it back and they said, no, it's time for this blue machine and Ford Nation, Doug Ford. In terms of Ontario, they're sick of the political correctness. They're sick of things like sex ed curriculum. They're sick of the mom and dad are taken out of family law. They're sick of debt. They're sick of the lies. They're sick of the inaction. And so, again, this government's got a big job to do, and we'll see how they do. But it's certainly a great opportunity because Ontarians are expecting them to go in and be a normal government. Not all this deficit financing and all these secret deals and the same people that are cashing in, the hydro rates, all of that. Just regular life, and I think that's what this is all about.
And you mentioned the press there. The press has been handling Doug Ford, I would say, similarly to how they handled his late brother, Rob. During this election, we saw them going along with the NDP lies that Doug's just planning on firing nurses and lots of other sorts of things. What do you think the relationship between the mainstream media and Doug Ford will be over the next 4 years?
I don't think it matters. I think that's what this message is. In fact, you know what? There's some of us in the mainstream media that did get it right, but most of them here didn't. And of course, everything stays the same. They're still on all the panels today. They're the ones that get to explain to Ontario what happened here when they got it wrong. And of course, the Rebel didn't get it wrong. And I was just at the Rebel Live the other day where I gave a speech about this very thing. You invited me, in fact. And in that, I said, the one key thing I think I said is there's nothing to be afraid of with the Fords. They're good people. Remember I said that?
I do.
Well, that's what Ontario believes. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't keep on Doug Ford, make sure that he does keep his promises. You'll notice that the toughest question there was about this crazy, weird sex ed towards the kids. He didn't dodge the question. He has developed skills that are like Mayweather in boxing, where he ties up your arms, he does a shoulder defense, but he still slips in his punch, and he did that there. And you have the clip, you'll see it. He says that they're going to repeal the sex ed curriculum. If he does that, that will be the number one message, that, you know what, a normal government is back in.
That's great, and I really hope he does. Do you think that Doug Ford can keep all the promises, or do you think he will? I know he certainly has intention to, but do you think, dealing with the federal government and carbon taxes and that sort of thing, is he really going to fight tooth and nail?
Yes, he is the most important politician in Canada. He is the Prime Minister. Ontario runs it. Alberta has a big role in it, and we'll see that with Kenny next year or whenever he gets to be Premier. They'll work in tandem with this guy Mo, and they'll control this country in a way that we haven't seen before, because that's where the economic growth is. And they'll even get Quebec on side. The one thing about Doug Ford is that, all the criticism you hear in the media party about him, not one of those criticisms are accurate. He's not wild. He's not crazy. He's not any of that stuff. He's a normal person. Now, he's a human being. He may have faults and all that stuff, but the reality is that they've spun it wrong. They're wrong. This is a rebuke of the media. And, you turn on the radio every day, and all you hear is liberal talking points over and over and over again. You start to get conditioned, even if you're a conservative, think, gee, yeah, you know what? Ontario said go to hell. We don't want to hear it anymore. And yet the same panelists are on and the same shows are on, and that's what happens. I guess when, we'll see what happens, because I think if the media companies really want to reflect what people are wanting, they'll look at this election and they'll make some adjustments.
I really hope so. I hope it's not as combative as we see in our neighbors to the south with Donald Trump's relationship with the press.
The more combative it is, as you can see with the skills that Doug Ford has developed in terms of handling the media, like you just saw in this news conference and throughout the campaign, the better for him. It'll actually be more trouble for him if the media is not against him, because the public is not with this media.
Yeah, that's so right. Well, it's going to be an interesting 4 years, and we look forward to speaking to you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to do it. And, the last thing I'll say is that I don't like to be critical of the media. I'm not perfect, and I don't make, I make mistakes like anyone else does. But I go back to, as does Sue Ann Levy, we go back to the Rob Ford days as mayor, and we saw that he was a guy that needed help. And instead of helping him, they stomped on him. And basically, he's dead now. He's not, his spirit is very much here. But, people laughed at the Fords. Well, one has been elected mayor and was a very good mayor, and now one's going to be premier. He's going to be a very good premier. And yet on TVO and on other places, CBC and some of the mainstream radio stations, what were they telling you yesterday? They were telling you that this was close, that this was neck and neck, when it never was. Even the CBC poll trackers showed that Doug was in around 72 seats, up to 89 seats. And so rather than tell the truth, they decided to spin it. And you know what? That's what you got to watch for in the next few years. I think Doug will disarm all that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.